Tēnā tātou. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I was at Otiria Marae last week at a hui to look at the consequences of the Waitangi Tribunal finally agreeing with what our people have been saying for 175 years, that we didn't give up sovereignty. And I said at that hui, it's always nice to come back to the north because of the deep history and traditions around He Whakaputanga and Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And every time I come back here too, as I said last week at Otiri, I'm reminded that Kahununu's from here, and I'm always asked why he left. And I think probably he just had the good sense to come down to the East Coast. But it's always nice to come back. And I'd like to just talk a bit about the constitutional mahi we've been doing, but try and put it in a context. I'd like to acknowledge all the people here who are raising their voices against stat oil and so on. But I must say it gives me no pleasure to remember that 11 years ago, when our people opposed the taking of the foreshore and said that one of the reasons the Crown wanted to take the foreshore and seabed off Māori was they knew that as long as our people had the foreshore, it would not be polluted, it would not be raped, it would not be drilled. We were mocked for saying that. We were called alarmists, and yet that has sadly come true, because within 1 month of the Crown passing the original foreshore and seabed legislation, they had leased the first drilling licence on the foreshore and seabed. It also gives me no pleasure to recall just 11 years ago that many people accepted the call of Don Brash and others that the seabed belonged not to iwi but to Kiwi, in one of the most offensively racist campaigns I've ever seen mounted against our people. And now we're having to reap the whirlwind of the refusal at that time to listen to the genuine pleas and arguments of our people. And those arguments were based in the end on a sense of powerlessness. You will recall in 2004 that nearly 50,000 Māori people and others began a hikoi throughout the country to Parliament to ask the government not to exercise its constitutional power to take away the foreshore and seabed from iwi and hapu. The Crown used its constitutional power to ignore those 50,000 people, plus all of those that they represented. 2 weeks later, 40 Pākehā farmers staged a protest march through Wellington to the steps of Parliament, asking the Crown not to exercise its constitutional authority to pass what became known as the fart tax, a tax that was going to be placed on dairy farmers for methane emissions from their cows. The Crown listened to those 40 farmers and exercised their constitutional power not to pass that particular law. What that exercise showed once again is that our people have been rendered constitutionally powerless. That is, we cannot make our own decisions about what is best for our people, what is best for the country. Because I'm absolutely sure that if the foreshore and seabed had remained within the authority of hapu and iwi, there would not be a protest today against stat oil, because stat oil would not be here. And so the work that we have been asked to do is to talk to our people about how can we bring back that constitutional power. That is, how can we once again make the decisions that for hundreds of years we made before 1840. And that if, as our people have been saying since 1840, we never gave away our mana, our rangatiratanga, our right to make those decisions, then on what right now does the Crown claim to do so? And what ways can we find to bring that mana and rangatiratanga back in terms of decision making? And so, as Margaret said, we've travelled around the country. We've met and talked with thousands of our people. We haven't met every Māori, of course, but we've asked a really simple question. If we did not give away our sovereignty, if we still have the right to make our own decisions, and we could do it tomorrow based on tikanga, he whakaputanga and te tiriti o Waitangi, what might that look like? What might that look like? And some people may have thought, oh, that's really unrealistic, that's never going to happen. But the Crown has been saying that to us since 1840, and we have never given up the right and the determination to say that. And the kōrero from our people has been absolutely amazing. They may not use the word constitution, they may not understand all the ramifications of a constitutional process, but we understand powerlessness because we have had to live with it for 175 years. We understand the desire that our tipuna left for us to overcome that powerlessness and make our decisions once again. And the task we have now is to try and pull together all of that kōrero and just create, if you like, a discussion document for our people so that when this discussion continues, and it will, until the day we actually re-establish a constitutional process based on tikanga, he whakaputanga and te tiriti, we have a reference source so that our mokopuna can say, oh, my nanny's in that book because she went to that hui in 2013, or my koro was at that hui in 2015 where they discussed these questions. This is the guidance they gave us in their words. So for me it's very humbling and very inspiring work, and I hope the mahi that we produce, which we will distribute as widely as we can, will be of help to our people, so that rather than just saying we never ceded sovereignty, we can begin to talk about, if we didn't cede it, what does that mean? How can we create a new way of governing this land? So how can, for example, Ngāti Kahu once again make decisions for Ngāti Kahu? How can Ngāti Kahungunu once again make decisions for Ngāti Kahungunu? Because in 1840, or before 1840, if Te Rarawa wanted to make a decision for Te Rarawa, they never travelled down to Pōneke to ask Te Atiawa for permission to make that decision. Since 1840, under the imposed, imported constitutional system from England, we all have to travel down to Wellington to ask permission of that constitutional system. That is not a system of governance based on tikanga, it's not based on he whakaputanga, it's not based on te tiriti. And I have a hope, and I've just set an arbitrary date for myself and my whānau, that by 2040 we will have reclaimed that right to make our decisions. So that when we come back to Waitangi to mark the 200th signing, I'll be quite old then, I'll be 42 then. But when we come back to Waitangi in 2014, it is my hope that my mokopuna will be able to come here knowing that their hapu, their iwi, is once again in control of its own destiny. I think that's a dream devoutly to be dreamed, a wish to inspiringly be hoped for. And at that time, perhaps, if we have a constitution based on tikanga, then it might reflect the new tangata whenua-based constitution in a small South American country called Bolivia, where after 500 years of being ruled by a constitutional system imported from Spain, they decided to recreate their own ways of making decisions in their land. And 7 years ago they introduced a new constitution, which is quite remarkable because the opening article in that constitution is called the Prime Law of Pachamama. And Pachamama is their tangata whenua word for Papatuanuku. So in Bolivia, you cannot make a decision that infringes the rights of Mother Earth. If we have a constitution based on the rights of Papatuanuku, then we will have no need to protest Stat Oil, because by its very nature, it is infringing the mana of Papatuanuku. So I would hope that that change in a different constitutional system will benefit not just my mokopuna, but the mokopuna of everyone who has come to live in our land. It really has been a privilege and an honour to be part of this work, to work with Margaret and others on the working group, and I hope the document we produce later this year will enable our people and indeed the whole country to work towards that change in 2040. I'd like particularly to thank our rangatahi, the group that's been coordinated by Veronica Tawhai for the work they've done. Often with very young people, high school students and so on, just asking them to think about what might this country be like if it is based on tikanga, he whakaputanga and te tiriti. And I'm really grateful for the work that the rangatahi and indeed our whole working group has done. And thank you again for having this time this morning. Kia ora.